Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. And I would like to introduce Marc Miller from Imagine IT. He's one of the co-owner of Imagine IT and MSP in Minnesota. How's it going, Marc, today?
Great. Yeah, perfect. Thanks for having me. It's great.
So Marc, this interview is all about digital maturity, digital transformations, coding, measuring digital transformation, which is really abstract for everybody. Why actually you are working on that? Why you feel passionate about this issue to measure and manage digital transformation?
Yep. I think you hit it right on the head. Right now, digital transformation, I think, is in a state kind of like the cloud computing was 10 years ago. Everybody was talking about it. Cloud computing was the greatest thing, and everybody was sort of waving their hands around in the air. And if you talked with one person about cloud computing, they had one definition, another person had another idea, another person was completely talking about something completely different. And I think digital transformation is starting to take that same sort of shape. If you talk to one company or corporation, or you listen to one podcast, they're talking about digital transformation in one aspect, and you read something else someplace, and they're talking about it in a completely different manner. The bottom line is that digital transfer, every single company in the world, right, is going through some sort of digital transformation. The problem with it is nobody really right now has a method or a way to look at this in any kinds of terms other than saying, wow, this is cool, or ooh, if we look back a year ago, we're much better off right now than we were a year ago. But it's all sort of fluff and puffery, right? If a business ran their core business functions the same way as they sort of talk about technology and this idea of digital transformation, I mean, a CFO would never come into a leadership meeting and give their financial report and say, wow, our finances are really good. And they're much better than they were last quarter. I mean, the CEO would say, well, that's interesting, Bob, but tell me about that, right? I mean, what do you mean they're better? I mean, what are the numbers that we're actually looking at? And that's the way that business leaders run their business, right? They have specific numbers that drive outcomes that are tied to sort of a larger corporate vision and strategy. But from a digital perspective, from a technology perspective, we're really still just talking about it in terms of, wow, that's cool, or we're so much better off than we were before, or won't that be neat when we can do this? But we don't really have a number to measure it, and that's a big problem.
That's interesting what you're saying, because somehow I feel that this digital transformation is happening with the clients. They are not driving that, meaning somebody told me like the technology is always a bottleneck. Right? It's never an opportunity. It's always a problem. It's always, we outgrown our line of business application. We need a new CRM because the current, it doesn't provide something. So it's always kind of improvement, but somehow it's never like, hey, wait a sec, we would like to get there, and how technology can actually lead us there and be one step ahead of the game, not like always be, behind and try to be reactively working on that. And actually what you're saying, this measurement can actually be really see where these companies are. And if it would be a unified measurement, that would be much easier to make decisions, not ad hoc and things like that. So I think it's really, really important to go through how actually, or what is actually the implications of this digital transformation, what make it real.
So if you look at maturity and you look at what we would maybe consider a digitally immature company, right? I think that company is in a position where their technology, where they're still looking at their technology as basically, it's a cost source, right? It's a drag on, it goes into the bucket of just being an outcome. I end up spending money on my technology. I do it because it's a necessary evil. I know that I have to upgrade my antiquated phone system, and I kind of do it kicking and screaming, right? On the other side of the spectrum is a company that's very digitally mature. Those companies are looking at technology as an investment, right? And when we invest in something, when we invest in the stock market, we're looking for that investment to grow. You don't invest in the stock market to lose money. You don't invest in the stock market to even have your money stay flat. You put money in the stock market because you think you're going to end up making more money by investing in the stock market. And companies that are digitally mature look at their technology and they look at the spend that they're spending on their technology as an investment. The problem with it is we still, even as a managed service provider now with my clients, we haven't done a great job in years past of tying that technology investment into the company's growth. And again, on the other end of the spectrum, for a digitally immature company, they're not even thinking about that. They're just spending the money. They've got to spend $12,000 on a new phone system, and it's just writing a check for $12,000, and that's the end of the story. A digitally mature company is looking at writing that check for $12,000 because they're going to see a better relationships with their customers. Yeah. They're going to see better collaboration with the team. They're going to see higher levels of productivity and efficiency, which are going to drive higher revenues and gross profits and EBITDA and the things that we measure that really make sense to the company. So I think having a perspective on, sort of this immature versus mature, and understanding that every company right now is somewhere on this scale. Okay. The problem right now is that nobody knows where they're at. They don't know if they're a 37 on this scale or whether they're a 77 on this scale. And because they don't know what things they need to change or modify to help them improve and get closer to this mature, digitally mature company.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, because for me it was clear what's the problem. But when you state that, it's really interesting. We are so into this whole thing is we don't really see an average company's life, how this is affected by that. Not being immature. It's like they probably don't see themselves as an immature company, right? They don't see what is the problem. They feel the symptoms. We don't adopt technologies. Nothing is working for us. We implemented this and that application and it didn't work. It's just not work for us. It's not for our industry, right? They see the symptoms. And what you mentioned was really, really a big issue, that the trust of technology. If you fail adopt technologies, you start to be hesitant. You are not writing the checks that quickly. You are not letting these projects lead, and you are losing your edge. You are losing your innovation because you had unsuccessful and basically the immaturity is the problem. How do you feel that is affecting the small, medium businesses? Because we know enterprises are different, but these 20 people to 200 people organizations, how they can benefit from being digitally mature?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I would say that the answer to that question, again, 5 years ago, is completely different than it is now. We have a tendency to talk about enterprise businesses and versus small businesses. And the cool thing with all the technology that's out there right now is it's virtually leveled the playing field.
Yes.
The technologies that are available to a small business right now are the exact same, literally the exact same technologies that are available to big business. So that's not really an excuse for a small business to operate in a dark closet anymore, right? Yeah. They can't put their head in the sand and say, business intelligence and really doing analytics on my data, that's really something for enterprise level companies like IBM and 3M. Mm-hmm. That's not something that's available for me. And I'm like, it is, right? It's literally part of the platform that you're on right now. You just need to decide as a small business that you want to play, right? You got to get in the game and play.
And most of the time, what's funny is, Mark, they have already paying for those, just not adopting and not leveraging. That was the biggest epiphany for me when this COVID hit, that in a week, everybody was Zoom. Everybody, those type of technologies that was implemented just became adopted. and people get used to that. And it was like, wow, that's a human factor. So that's actually leading us to the first part of the measurement, which is people and culture. How you would define, or how you would see this in a relation of digital transformation, digital maturity? Why this is important as a first step, people and culture?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, people really, if you look at technology, and the way that I sort of look at it, I sort of look at technology and IT as being slightly different. I look at technology as being the stuff, right? The technology are the applications that we use. It's the laptops we use. It's the desktops that we use. It's the video cameras we use. It's putting our information in Azure or AWS. You know, it's the cloud platforms. It's the stuff that we have. IT, on the other side, is sort of the combination of this tool that we have and the people who use the tools, right? So there's sort of two ways in my world as a managed service provider. There's sort of two ways that we look at this. One is sort of backwards looking, right? I have customers out there who use their tools and their tools break. They can't do something, they can't access data, they're locked out of something. And so as a managed service provider, I come in and my team fixes those things, and we make sure that the environment that they're using is fully available to them, and they can have access to their data from wherever they need it. And that's sort of part of that equation. And the other part of this equation is really sort of looking forward to see what are the things that how could I use this tool better than I'm using it right now, right? I mean, a very simple product that's been around for 25 years, right, is Microsoft Word. And they say now that Microsoft Word has 1,200 or so different functionalities and different, pull down menus and things you could do within Microsoft Word. And the average user is using 2% or 5% of those. 20 or 25 things is what they use. And that's cool, right? The people at Microsoft are super smart, and they didn't invent the other 1,150 functions within Word because they were bored and didn't have anything else to do. Every single function that's in Word, there's a reason for it being there, and the reason is to make the product simpler to use, more efficient, and to make the people who use it more productive, right? The problem with it is most companies, 99% of the companies out there, aren't even looking at those other functions within Word that might drive their business and help their business become slightly better, right? So without searching for that added functionality, the chances of me becoming more productive in doing the things that I do over the course of the day is just no chance. If I'm not looking for it, I'm not going to be able to find it, and I'm not going to be able to drive this better. The interesting thing with this is, and you come back to sort of culture and the people part of it, right, is that people like to succeed. They like to do more. They like to be really, really good at what they do. So if I took a look at Microsoft Word, for instance, and I got a professional in there and said, what are the 5 features that we're not using now that you could see us using that are really going to heighten my team and heighten what we can do and make us all more productive and better? And we identified those 5 features, and we trained everybody on those 5 features, and we had the whole team sort of using these things together. Everybody gets jacked up and fired up about that, right? I leave the office today saying that I was able to do, I typically am able to write 4 of these reports in a day, right? And when I'm doing that, I'm just working my tail off, and I'm doing my deal. Company's being very successful. And all of a sudden I do this training, and I have these 5 other features that we learned, and now I'm able to produce 6 of these reports in a day, right? As a person going home, I just feel great about my day. I'm a better husband when I get home. I'm a better father when I get home. My whole life is better because I'm more productive and getting more done with what I'm doing. And that's based on me using this tool, this technology that I've got to grind away with and do my job for 8 hours a day. When I can do it better, I'm just fired up about it. And in the end, the business does better too, right? If I'm able to raise my productivity 50%, that's going to drive the bottom line of the company, right?
Yeah, and like Mark, like I can imagine, like this this really interesting point of view that we have these senior guys, 50, 60-year-old, really well rounded, gray hair, earn their gray hair. And we have
Yep.
these millennials, 20 some years, and how much is the difference on their culture? The guy is so quick to adopt a new tool, software, look for Google or something else. The other guy is like, oh yeah, let's do paper, whatever. And which is better? None of them. They have to work together. Like that's the kind of
Right.
thing which we have to go through as a transition. And people part is just from the 7. If we just focus on the people part and nothing else, it's just a huge leverage for team collaboration, personal productivity, remote work, anything. So it's really, really unleashing the potential of a small business and actually be able to do more with less. So, and doing more with less, leading me to the next part is the processes. And every company is working in processes, step-by-step approach to be able to scale, define those processes, and have critical and key processes for sales and marketing. And most of the time, what we see is that these processes are just happening. These are just there. Somebody has in their mind. It's not always written down. Some people start to do like a software for that part of the deal, but the other one is like not even documented. How you feel this is really a part of a digital transformation to actually dial your processes and make sure your company is running as a clockwork?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Processes is obviously a big part of this, and I want to tie this into what you just said before, because I think the ability to collaborate, like you just set up a scenario that happens in all these businesses, right? Where they have these millennials come in. Millennials, they're so, I mean, technology is just second nature for them. They type fast, they think fast. If they can't figure something out, they Google it real quick and they figure out a solution for it. They're not afraid of clicking buttons and typing things. They just go for it, right? On the other side of this, you have an elderly person who's not elderly, but an older person who's been in the business for a long time. They're a seasoned veteran. They've been there, they've done that, they've seen the problems, but they're maybe a little bit hesitant with the technology piece, right? And you talked about collaboration. Most of the time, these two people work in complete separate silos, and the millennials pounding away doing their deal, and the more experienced veteran person is over there in his cube, with post-it notes and a yellow piece, yellow notepad, and just touching the technology when they can. But with the collaboration tools that we have right now, it's possible for both of these two individuals to get on the exact same spreadsheet at the same time, and the millennial can be working the technology side of this thing while the senior veteran person is coaching the millennial on the processes that have worked and been used and been modified and tightly honed over the past 15 years. And the two of them could work together on this project and building the spreadsheet. And the guidance that the senior person is able to give to the millennial to very quickly produce this spreadsheet, what they can do together is it's just mind-boggling, as opposed to the two of them working separately. Right?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you are talking about synergies. Like how these 1 + 1 equals more than 2, right?
Exactly.
But many cultures, many organizations, 1 + 1 equals less than 2 because they are fighting each other, which is good. Let's do this. But they don't understand each other and these processes, these projects. Not even not automated. It's breaking down and broken down. And like how many automations like these millennials can figure out, like, okay, now we have the process. So how to integrate with this little tool and that little tool and send an application alert. And we are not talking about like artificial intelligence here, Mark. We are talking basic stuff. And these processes, if small businesses can leverage to have better processes, get more agile, way less, time, and give an Amazon experience to their clients, right? Why just big companies can create awesome experience? Why small businesses can have? When I have a dentist and, it sends me a text message before that, it sends me a text message, after that, I see everything is automated, and I feel a customer experience.
Right.
Not from Amazon, from my local dentist, because they mature in digital way. Any other example for processes, projects, automation, Mark?
Well, as processes are really, to some degree form the core of this digital transformation conversation, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, most companies have processes in place. And I think, again, if you looked at that on some kind of a maturity scale, the companies that are more mature, excuse me, they actually have these processes very carefully documented. They have an owner of the process, so that when this process changes or is modified, the owner of the process documents this and makes these changes, so that these things, again, once I have a process that's documented, it's much easier for me to start pulling the pieces of this process apart to say, these 3 parts of this 5-step process, these 3 parts are working extremely well, very, very efficient. This 4th part of this process now is a bottleneck. This 4th part of this process is really slowing down the output that we have in this whole thing. But now, because I've identified that, I can really dive into that 4th process and see what is it that we can change and modify and get that so it's not so much of a bottleneck. The other thing that processes give you and allow you the ability to do is start to measure. Once I've got something broken down into a process that starts and ends, now I can measure this thing. And once I can measure it, I can say, look at what we've done. We fixed this 4th step in this process. It wasn't fixed in Q1 and we outputted X. Now look at this. In Q2, we fixed the 4th step of this process. And by the end of Q2, the output that we were able to do was X plus 5 or whatever it is, right? Once I've identified the process and can measure it, now I can start to make some tactical strategic changes that, again, start to tie into the overall general goals that we have for the company.
That's Mark, is like really mind blowing that it's like we don't have to pay for anything until we had this conversation. We just should use what we have. It's not like, you need X amount of dollars of investment. And that's leading me to the 3rd component of this measurement, which we call platforms. And platforms can be really like another buzzword, cloud, whatever, but it's just really interesting, like what platforms can do for you. Like you are not having a taxi anymore. You are using Uber. You are not checking in a hotel. You are using Airbnb. You are using Facebook to interact with. Like we are using so many platforms as individuals every day. All of them enabled by digital technologies. As companies, what type of social media platforms we can use internally, externally, with clients, what e-commerce platforms we can use to open up new markets and sell our goods or services to different places. Imagine 99 Design. Like you are an individual graphic designer, you are accessible to the world. That's like imagine like 10 years ago, like all the customers was just like for your local town. Or service platforms, you can hire a virtual assistant to your team or to your company. So I feel that platforms are really utilized by companies and not really thinking about how their processes and life and strategy can be done and be better with platforms. How do you feel about that, or what the best practice you see there, Mark, when we talk about platforms?
Well, like you say, the platforms that we use right now, they extend into every single aspect of our business. The platform right now that is really sort of catching hold with small businesses is Office 365.
Yeah.
And within this platform, just this one platform itself, you now have email, and you have Teams, a collaboration product, and you have SharePoint, which ends up being a place to share and store and safely access all of your data from any device, anywhere, anytime. You also have within the platform analytics like Power BI, and you have a CRM, and you have your accounting package, and all of this now lives on this one platform, which once it lives on the same platform, the integrations between all of these different functions end up becoming almost seamless. And so this all of a sudden opens up doors that, again, three years ago, 5 years ago, didn't even exist. People couldn't even start to comprehend some of the stuff that's built into this platform right now that costs you $5 per user per month, right? It's just unbelievable the kinds of stuff that you can do with this central business platform. But beyond that, as you talked about it, beyond that now you start to take e-commerce. Let's say that I do some e-commerce with my business and I do some online sales. By choosing the right platforms, I can now start to tie that e-commerce platform into this Office 365 platform with email, with my accounting package, with my CRM, with my calendaring, scheduling. I mean, everything starts to become part of that. On the other side, on the back office side, I can do my banking the old school way, and I can take my checks and stamp them on the back and sign them and put them in a bag and run down to the bank and deposit them. Or I can get on now, almost all of the banks have some kind of an online e-commerce sort of thing where I can have access to all my funds and do everything that I need to do electronically. And again, I can tie that banking platform into my CRM or into my accounting package that sits on my Office 365 platform. And all of a sudden I start to have this breadth of access to all of the data that I need to run my business through kind of a single platform. Microsoft was a great example years ago. They had locked down their platform and they said, we're going to keep everything that we have very, very separate, and you can't get into it and nobody can tie their hooks into it. And with the advent of Office 365, Microsoft looked into their crystal ball and said, oh my gosh, we need to open this thing up and have everybody have access to this. And so now the back end of Office 365 is able to tie into your e-commerce platform, and the back end of Office 365 is able to tie into your local bank so that you can see all these transactions and manage and monitor all this stuff.
So it's just like it's unbelievable that like an organization can led by 4 or 5 people and utilizing a marketing agency, because they have the tied in what you said from everything from the website to the analytics to the communication to the processes. They can hire outsourced dropshipping company, whatever, who is dealing all the logistics. So you can actually build up companies building on these platforms really quickly, and that's become something like a Lego. Like you put your company together as a Lego. And what's really interesting here, that we've been talking about people, we've been talking about processes, we've been talking about platforms. Just these 3 things cannot live without each other. If you don't have a process, nothing to put on the platform. But for platforms, you need some type of process and people to understand and put together, the culture and everything. So it's really interesting that everything ties together. But that's what the beauty of that, measurement is, that you are measuring the pieces you can act upon. It's not a big, buzz now. It's not like vague or something like that. So it's leading to the 4th component, if you can see. Let's the information, the data, the information, the reports, the analytics, the information management, making decisions. Like, holy cow! Like, now we have all this information everywhere. Or different. We have all this data.
Yep.
But is it really information? Is it really helping me to make decisions? It's just I'm getting overwhelmed. And that's another kind of thing on the internet as well, like how much the information we are creating every day, right? We almost double every month or so. So it's like crazy. So how do you feel this information? What's best practice you have or story about like leveraging that information better for digital transformation?
Yeah, some of the concerns, and these are still important, but they're less important concerns now in the current environment that we're in. The backup of our data is still vitally important, right? There's so much cybersecurity issues out there, and just there's so much more access to this data from so many more endpoints, that having a solid backup is critical and is very important. But it's very different now than it used to be, because the backup is now owned in these data centers, in Microsoft's data centers or Amazon's data centers, that are the highest levels of backup that you can imagine, and are paired across multiple data centers. And so that's all super important, but it's not really on as much on me as the business owner anymore, as it is just making sure that I have everything set as it should be, and that people are responsible in the data centers and who have access to it. So backup is important, but it takes a different place in the strategic plan than it did several years ago. Then you come to sort of accessing this data, and you hit it right on the head. I mean, everybody right now, I access my information through the course of the day from my iPhone, from an iPad, from my PC, from the office, from my car, from my home office. It's unbelievable, right? That's just me. Everybody in the company is accessing data and needs real-time access to all this data all the time, from any device, basically from anywhere. So that again has crazy strategic advantages,
Yeah.
but also has some challenges. And so this is where, as we've talked about through each one of these components, having a strategy in place that is actually taking a step back and looking at the business and the business drivers, and how we need to access this information, and who needs access to the information, and when do they need access to the information. All of this sort of needs to play into this bigger equation, right? And it just ends up, part of the deal, like you said, is there's a difference, I think, between data and information. Data is the bits and bytes, and the amount of data that we have now is hundreds of times larger than it was even 5 years ago. The cool thing with that is now is that we're starting to have these analytics tools that we can turn on this data, that now starts to produce and massage and tweak and twist this data into information that we can actually use, right? I mean, hundreds of thousands of rows of cells, of just columns and rows of data that's in a spreadsheet is nice, but until you can take that data and turn it on its side and look at it from very, very different angles, and output something that says, oh my gosh, look at the insight that's built within that data, that's where the genuine value is in all of that. And we have access now to both. We have access to thousands of times more data than we had before, but we also have access to these tools that start to spin some sense and start to spin some insights out of that data.
That's interesting what you're saying, because yes, data, information, and insight. I think that's a profound distinguish here, because give you an example, like you can go into your website analytics and go into the deep and spend like half a day, right? But these new systems are like, I click on the guy who is on the website and I know what's his interest, because the CRM is actually taking consideration of where they clicked, which pages they seen, what emails they click, and this is profiled perfectly. So we can actually send some sort of email which is not intrusive, but it's up to their realm. It's not Amazon, not you can do that on your website with the basic like Wix.com subscription. It's kind of interesting. So that's again democratization of these technologies for that to make better decisions and be giving better client experience. So the information is like really interesting. But that leads me to the next, for the application part, because how you produce this information is like you have all these applications and how much application implementation failures we've seen. Like, oh, we have Teams, nobody's using that. Or we have these new fancy software, and like, yeah, we started working on that, but nothing happened. We don't get the result. And the more of these application failures are there, the less risk these companies are going to take, and the innovation is leading nowhere. So how to discover this? What's the best application for us? How to implement these applications? How to adopt these applications? How to manage these applications? Like, everybody's kind of dead by apps. No, I don't need another app. I don't need another login. No, don't even give me the it's really hard. Like, how many applications everybody should use a day? And what's these, how do you feel about this application part? Because that's another, like, that's the fifth component here, but it's like, I just feel I don't need another application, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting. The applications are, sort of rubber meets the road between the technology that you have, the stuff that you have, and the people, right? And it's really the applications really start to either become a lever or just become sort of a necessary evil with the way that you utilize that tool that you have in front of you. There's so many things that we've talked about before. Like part of the frustration I think that you feel, or that people feel with applications, is a lack of identifying a process, right? If I understand the process and I understand where the process fails, and now I look to the application, most of the applications that we have at our fingertips now have solutions for these process failures that exist within our environments. If we don't identify the process, then we can't really look to the application to find the answer that we need from within that application. We talked about the platform, and this also applies to the applications also, because all of these different platforms, there's a different application that runs on these platforms, and there's integrations that can happen, or that could happen. Sorry about that. There are integrations that we can have between these applications that let these applications talk to each other, and again start to really multiply the effect that you can have as you use these applications. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, just a simple application like Microsoft Word, and the fact that most people who use Word are literally just scratching the surface, using 2% to 5% of the potential capability. And that extends across every single application we have: Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Teams, in addition to your main line of business application, your ERP, your CRM. I mean, if we increase the use of the application even just 1% across the board, the amount of work that we would be able to do tomorrow versus what we can do today is going to be just astronomical. So I think you mentioned also, the selection of applications is critical too, because that's the way that people sort of throw applications at problems, like kind of throwing money at problems, right?
Yeah.
Without really truly understanding the process or the failures of the process. They say, hey, we need to get this new bright shiny application in here, without really backing up to really understand, what does this application give us that the one that we currently have doesn't? And more importantly, how are we going to do training of this application so that we're using it to its fullest extent?
And every application now falls into an ecosystem of applications. So you can't have an application solely purpose. It has to be tied to everything, so get like a seamless experience for the people, and they actually going to use it. Because if it's hindering them, they're just not going to use it, because that's not part of the plan. So that's really good, and that's kind of like goes into the sixth bigger item here, which is a saddest part. Here is the cybersecurity risk, and all these type of backend stuff kind of thing, which is, it's never shiny, never good. It's always, when we talk about risk as this component, it's never good. It's either we invest in something which we don't really feel we want, or we have these cybersecurity threats, which are actually super real for small businesses. It's really crazy. And you know what? You can spend a ton of time and money on creating policies, create password management, make sure you're protecting your people. They have to go home. You don't know what environment they are in. It's just the exposure for potential cyber attacks, or actually any issue, is just dramatic. And until you are not burned, it's happening with others, not you. And usually people are taking action after the fact, which is pretty sad and pretty problematic. So how do you feel that, because you are leading a managed service provider, so you are building up infrastructures, you are building cybersecurity services, having many certified employee. How do you feel this risk component to the digital transformation? Is it like something small business owners are seeing as a reality, or why they are not adopting more technologies, or how this is affecting their EBITDA or bottom line in that sense?
Yeah, I think the cybersecurity right now is out of control. I mean, with all of the capabilities that we have right now, with the technologies that are available to small and mid-sized businesses, and all of the different components within technology, all of that power has also opened up all kinds of threats for a small business. When I can access my data from my phone, my iPad, my computer, my work computer, from my home office, from my office, from my car, all of those different avenues of access to the information also open up avenues for cyber criminals, right? So this whole idea of cybersecurity, it's getting a lot of press right now, which is great. I'm not convinced that all, especially small and mid-sized business owners, have accepted it for the threat that it actually is. Most of the stuff that you read about is read about in hindsight, and an after approach to cybersecurity is a nightmare, right? If you're reacting and putting systems in place after you've been breached, after you've been compromised, after your information has been exposed on the internet or sold on the dark web, that's a terrible time to be implementing a cybersecurity solution. The biggest problem that I see right now within cybersecurity is companies are still looking at the cybersecurity environment as if it's a kind of a wish list. So their IT provider will come into the office with the CEO and they'll have a proposal on cybersecurity, and they'll say, here are the 15 things that are really important that we need to, these are all known exploits and known holes and vulnerabilities in your environment right now. And the CEO looks at this big list and they say, oh my gosh, we can't do all of that stuff right now. So which ones do you think, what are the top 3 or 4 that we should look at? And we kind of talk about it, and the CEO decides, okay, well, let's do those 4 things, and why don't you come back, in a couple of quarters, and we'll look at some of the rest of the stuff on your list. That philosophy and that idea doesn't make any sense, because the 15 things that are on this list aren't things that are hypothetical. These are actually real life vulnerabilities that businesses are being exploited on right now today. So we have to change we have to have a complete paradigm shift in the way that we look at cybersecurity. We have to start to look at this list of 15 things and say, we need to figure out a way together so that we can implement and check off every single one of these 15 things off the list. And when we determine another vulnerability, we need to fix that one too, right now, not in 2 quarters or 3 quarters when it's more convenient. These are real life living threats that we have right now today. And so we just have to get out of this. Yeah. It's a shift. We have to fix these things immediately.
Yeah, Mark, it's somehow, I don't want to use this term, but it's that's the ticket to ride. If you want to leverage digital transformation, digital technologies, make faster, be better, you have to pay the price for your security, because you are just cutting corners if you don't do that, and that's going to come back to you sooner or later, but it's going to come back.
Yep. Yeah. And when you're making these decisions too, I think on the front side, when you're making a technology decision, when you're looking at some sort of a digital transformation or any kind of a digital decision you're making, the security part of this has to be part of the decision you're making. That has to enter into the front side of that decision. If you're looking at a new application, you need to fully understand how is this thing protected on the back side, and where are any potential vulnerabilities that might exist within this application.
That's really interesting. And then actually we gone through all these six components: the people, processes, platforms, risk, information, applications. But there is one central component which is basically tie everything together. This is basically your digital transformation strategy, vision and strategy. And that's kind of like interesting, because you can pick and choose different solutions here or there, right? But without like somehow a unifying strategy, you can't spend what Steve Jobs said. It's really, your strategy is not just what you do, but what you choose not to do. So I mean, like, not just chasing our tails and go more application, more data, more whatever. Is that what is your vision as a company, and how technology actually can help to achieve that faster? And that philosophy comes back to this digital transformation strategy. And I know that you're a big advocate on that. And why do you feel that's actually really a good exercise to do right now? And why do you feel it's not really overwhelming and daunting experience that might be thinking like, oh, that's a strategy is like a big thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. You're right. I'm a firm believer that any technology stuff that you're doing right now, if you don't have a very well defined strategy and vision that kind of encompasses that, the chances of you fully utilizing and really using technology as a leverage, the chances of that happening are fairly small. Really good digital technology and strategy is going to get you out of this world of fluff and puffery. Yeah. And talking about your technology as being, wow, it's really good and it's cool and it's much better than it used to be, and actually will get you into some measurable key performance indicators that show you that your investment in this technology is truly an investment because it's helping you grow. The way that we sort of view the vision and the digital vision strategy is, there is the work that's done in your company every single day with the technology that you have and the people that are doing the work. And someplace above that, there is kind of a corporate vision and mission and some goals and objectives that the leadership team, the owners, the management have set forth that this work is going to produce. And if we're successful over the course of the year, there's kind of a marriage between these two. The digital strategy and vision really sits between those two things, between the work that's being done, the technology that's being used, and the people that are using this technology to drive the results that have been set forth and have sort of been positioned by the company as company goals and objectives. Mm-hmm. And I think without that middle piece, you're sort of operating just a little bit blind. Everybody every day is showing up for work, you're using this technology, you're doing your deal, and you're just sort of kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that this is all going to match at the end, and you're going to hit the kind of the corporate objectives and strategies. So I think it's really a roadmap that sets out how you're going to use the tools and how the people are going to use those tools more effectively to drive the bottom line, sort of the business, and get you to those business objectives and goals you're looking for.
It's really interesting because it's not just about the vision to actually be able to connect the dots with your financials and make sure that you have somehow the vision, but actually how this is going to tie back to the operation, like who is going to be accountable on those projects, who is going to be responsible to adopt this very application, how are we going to make our managed service provider accountable on the performance of our back end. How this whole thing can be governed, like how we can actually drive that, how we can measure that, how we are able to manage this whole foundation of our company, basically. So that's really profound here. And any good example you can give us, like what aha moments like people get when they go through this planning process?
I'll tell you one we just recently went through with a customer. They're a medical company. They do consultations with people who are having issues. And they through this COVID thing, they needed to do more telemedicine, right? They weren't able to meet with people face to face, and so they wanted to be able to do telemedicine types of things. If you follow HIPAA at all, HIPAA sort of reduced their requirements a little bit and allowed sort of an opening for these telemedicine, these online appointments basically between doctor and patient to happen, right? So this company went out and found a solution that was going to work for them, and it was going to cost them $5,000 a month. So works in their budget, but that's a fairly big number over the course of a year. We had just recently done Office 365 implementation with them, and through the course of some conversations and as they pivoted to doing more of these online discussions, we said, well, you know that there's a video conferencing component right within Microsoft Teams. What if we looked at trying to put together a Teams environment that mimics what you're doing right now with this other product, because you're already paying for Teams? Maybe we could save you some money. So we got our developers together, got in the same room with them, talked about the individual components and the really cool things that were part of this other program that weren't out of the box part of Microsoft Teams. And our developers said, well, we can do that, and we can do that, and we can do that. It ends up that the project that we ended up proposing to them was a $25,000 project. So fairly significant project. But once that project is done, it pays for itself in 5 months. So once we had that and we outlined that and we showed through sort of the strategic process that we went through, once we showed them that, yes, you're going to have to pay a little bit of money to do this project, it's literally going to pay for itself in 5 months. And after that, it's almost like you're making $5,000 a month based on the environment you have right now. It was a complete no-brainer for this company to implement this project.
And that's a perfect example to actually the whole driver of digital transformation is not like paying more. It's just like have the budget and spread the budget to the places where it needs to be. So like we are close to the end of this interview, Mark, and I would like to just like just a little bit zoom back. What is the actual problem we wanted to solve? Because we have gone through these 7 different areas of being able to make this digital maturity more real, more measurable, more tangible, the actions more specific. Like how you feel the original problem lies and how you feel this initiative can help the companies moving forward.
I don't think there's any business right now. I don't think there's any business owner right now who believes that there will be less technology in the future than there is right now. Technology is a core foundational piece of every single business that's out there. And right now we don't have enough insight into the drivers for that technology to get to a point where we can truly look at technology as an investment, right? For instance, the company that we just talked about, they invested $25,000, and that investment is going to reap them $5,000 in savings a month after 5 months. That is a very clear, crystal clear example of an investment that reaps rewards. That's an investment that is going to foster growth for that company in the future. That's how we need to start looking at all technology investments. We can't just throw money at technology and sort of cross our fingers and hope that it's good and look at it as a new shiny object. Every investment that we make, every time we decide to make a technology enhancement to our environment, we should be able to draw a line to how that's going to make the company better, how it's going to make the company better, how it's going to make the people more productive or more happy, more enjoy their jobs better. But there needs to be a line between everything that we're doing. And right now, the way that most of technology is being sort of implemented in the environment, it's being implemented with very little insight into how that's truly driving the business and the impact it's going to have later on. Everybody sort of crosses their fingers and hopes that it is. Everybody says, wow, that's cool, look what we can do. But there's not really again, there's not really somebody that's accountable for those performance indicators getting to the point where we can truly show that it's truly an investment.
It's Mark. Thanks for that. That was really a great summary. And Digital Maturity Group has developed something called Digital Maturity Score, which basically take these 7 areas to a really easy to complete questionnaire format, and our certified digital advisors are super happy to go through this process with everybody. We are collecting more data to get more information and more insight, to get benchmarks and see what's happening now, what's trending now, where to invest money, which is mature enough technologies to be able to adopt things like that. So if you are interested on that, just submit on the questionnaire. Somebody's going to send you the questionnaire, go through, have an interview, and that's you are able to have like an action plan to move forward from there. So it's really a great exercise. I can't emphasize that more. And Marc, thank you very much for your wisdom today. That was really awesome. I think it's like, I always feel like it's so much low-hanging fruits for an average small business owner. For that is just incredible. Just incredible amount of opportunities out there now. So, and everything is, the adoption is really quick now because of the COVID. Everybody's adopting change quicker. They adopt, they accept change better because of the situation. So it's better. There is no better time than today to actually have a strategy and start these initiatives to make sure these companies are going to be more digital and modern to future to come. Marc, again, thank you very much. That was an awesome interview. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. That was great.